This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
This is what every person listening right now needs to hear, to take that little voice and build a product with it. We all need to get our minds right, to stop pouring poison in our ears about the price is too low or that's going to take years and $100K, so I just won't even try. Fuck that. Everyone thinks that. You want to be like everybody else, or do you want to be different? Start filling your ear with what really matters. Stop trying to save your way to money in the bank. Your problem isn't trying to save $20 on your phone bill or trying to pay $50 less on an ECU or even the $500 more that your rent costs than your competitors. Your problem is the money you're not earning yet because you're not doing anything that really matters. Look, I know that's harsh, but that's the industry. That's business. That's life. You're not creating enough value for other people. It's not about you. It's about beating the shit out of records, horsepower goals, a better tuning experience, a more user-friendly forum, or whatever other people aren't doing yet. Make no mistake about it, I'm calling myself out right now. I'm taking my own advice to build something that matters for others. I do this podcast twice a week so you have a resource to help bring context, to spread ideas, and to make connections. Look, people think I'm a motivational speaker and that I belong in the self-help section. I get that. I also know that some positive encouragement and a list of resources twice a week isn't going to make $1 million business. Some hurdles are going to be really hard to overcome. Maybe some hurdles can't be overcome. What I'm saying is that after 10 years owning a business in this industry and after 15 years playing in it, I finally see the matrix for the zeros and ones. The reality is you have to build shit that matters. And like most things that matter, it's not going to happen overnight. Or you worked really hard for 3 whole months on a project. Wow, now pat yourself on the back, but don't stop and don't complain. Ask yourself how many people or how big of a problem did that project solve? Look, I get it. So this is me listening. I'm listening to the market. I'm watching and listening to the performance industry and to each and every featured guest on this show. And I'm listening to you. To create something that matters, something that you can use to grow and continuously improve your skill set, your business. I'm calling myself out, telling everybody, watch this. I hope you take what you hear and apply it. The time is now. The time is always now.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now. So I'm absolutely giddy to have Martin Musial, the founder of AMS and Alpha Performance, who's the world leader in R35 Nissan GTRs. They sell and install power packages for Nissan GTRs in the power range upwards of 2,000 horsepower in legitimate street cars, and also offer their own product line for exotics such as the Audi R8, McLaren MP4 12C, and European vehicles like Mercedes, BMW, and Porsche. Martin, I've been thinking about this interview for weeks, and when I talk about do it for a living, I always tell them that AMS Performance will be on the show because your company holds a high level of prestige. How does it feel to own a business that's at the top of the heap, knowing that you built this business from the ground up? Man, are you as pumped as I am?
Yeah, man, I'm definitely pumped. But like I said, man, I don't really like step back and look like, oh, I built this awesome thing, man. To me, it's just, it's a passion. It's what I love to do, and if I could do it and keep on doing it for a long time, to me, that's the best thing,
That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and your business, how you got started?
Oh, boy, this could be a long story. So I'm trying to think how far back should I go? Should I go to like when I was a kid?
Give us your education. How did you first? Were you doing RC cars when you were a kid?
Oh, man, dude, I would take – well, first off, I was like, oh, can I swear in this show? And then I listened to Paul Yaw's interview, and holy shit, okay, I can swear in this show. Not that I'm going to a lot, but I don't have that fear. But
no, let's just get the real, authentic you. That's what we're about. No censorship. Let's just talk real stuff.
So when I was a kid, I always took stuff apart, and just like my parents would tell me, like my mom would like leave the room, and I was like, I don't know, like 4 years old, and like I pulled the chair up, like the thermostat in the house, and she comes out of the room and walks in, and here I am, like with a screwdriver taking the house thermostat apart. She's like, "What's going on?" Freaking out. So I was always like tinkering stuff. My parents would buy me an RC car, and I would take it apart. The first thing I would do. So I kind of always had that in me. I want to see how things worked, And I think I got that partly from my dad, because my dad's an engineer also, and he's old school from Poland, and everything has to be a certain way, and I think I picked up a lot of his habits, or they got passed down to me, of wanting to know how things work, and everything's got to be right, and but he always, like, when I was a kid, he had cars that he worked on and tried to fix up and things like that, and is always kind of very mechanically minded, so I think I got a lot from there.
Gotcha. So then as your education went on, what's your college background and, in high school and stuff? When did you really start, when you turned 16, for example, were you starting to wrench on cars and knew that that's what you were going to do?
My parents, they didn't have a lot of money, so like, when I turned 16 or when I was younger, I guess I really have a car or, anything really fun to drive. My parents, it was crazy. My dad, when I was younger, like before I really got into cars, my dad had him and his buddies would travel to Europe, and back when like the U.S. dollar was really strong, they'd go pick up like crazy Porsches, like BMWs, AMGs, Mercedes, all this stuff. They'd buy like a car that was like a year old, and they'd bring it over here to the U.S. and go through like the DOT, whatever change, and they sell the cars and make more money than they would in their regular day jobs. So I remember my dad used to have all these cool cars. I'm like, oh man, it's so awesome. I get older, get my license, have these cool cars. And seriously, I got into high school, and he went from like, the BMW 635 CSI to a 120 horsepower Peugeot 505. It was just like total opposite spectrum. And like, my mom had a diesel Volvo. I was like, oh, come on, why can't you have cool cars now? So, but no, he kind of got me into cars, and then I wanted to play with cars, but he was always very like, don't waste your time on that. Go to school, become a doctor, engineer, lawyer. Don't waste your time on cars. And so he wasn't really, I guess, supportive of that stuff too much. But I went to college, Iowa State University, and I did a mechanical engineering program. And they had a program there called Formula SAE, which is basically a student-run organization where everyone's kind of given a basic set of parameters and rules, and you have to use a motorcycle engine or a small engine with a certain displacement, and you have to build the chassis around it. So that was actually, a huge learning experience. And I had no idea what I was doing back then, no clue. Here I am, welding on a chassis. I've never welded before with a MIG welder. I'm wearing like a T-shirt, like a pair of goggles, like learning how to weld for like 6 hours straight. And I remember that night, like going to bed, I'm like, why is everything burning? My face is burning. My arm is burning. I got up next morning and everything's bright red and burnt. I'm like, okay. I learned there's radiation coming off of that. But no, that was a cool program. I learned a lot there about just, hands-on stuff, about, some engine stuff, cars in general. And at that point, I'm like, I knew I wanted to do something with cars, and I started looking into, what you could do, go to race teams, work for an OEM at that point. But a lot of what I looked at OEM stuff, like, there's a good chance you get pigeonholed into designing like a lock cylinder for, some sedan. I'm like, and
not the exciting stuff.
Exactly. No, I didn't want to do that. That wasn't my passion. So I remember someone asked me, actually, I think senior year, what I wanted to do, and I'm like, I really like to open a performance shop and start making parts. But at that point, it was just a dream. I didn't have the money. I didn't, no idea how I was going to do it, and so I started kind of looking for jobs as I was about ready to graduate. And my father started a small tool and die shop. It was him and a business partner he had, and he started at my senior year, and as I was graduating, his business partner just got up and left. He lost it, mentally lost it, and just walked away. Wow. So my dad's like, "Hey, can you help me? When you done school, can you come back and help me?" And I mean, I can't say no. He paid for a big chunk of college. My parents were awesome. As I was growing up, I couldn't say no to my dad. So I actually went to work for him. And it was just the two of us for probably maybe 2 or 3 years. And again, that wasn't my passion. It was the metalworking industry. And I learned a lot from it. Again, I learned how to use, machines, tools, manual lathes and mills and all this hands-on practical experience. But it just was not for me, that industry. And I was, I think anyone says working with family is not easy. It was not. It was not easy. Plus, I was basically working for free. I mean, I was living at home still, but my dad really couldn't afford much. So, but I helped with the business, and we didn't see eye to eye, I guess, on business development. He was very of the mindset of, we'd buy this used machine and he'd want to spend 6 months rebuilding it to be the best machine it could be, that then we could start looking for work for his machine, where I was like, well, how about we land a job and then we just buy a new machine? If we have a guaranteed job, we just, so we kind of didn't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
And he,
would you say that he's more conservative and you're more of a go-getter? Yeah,
he's conservative and definitely, I think an old school mentality of, I don't know, hard to put it in words, but very, very kind of, strict, and he wants everything a certain, way, which is fine. And like I said, I learned a lot from that, and I picked up both the good and bad habits of that.
Right, the attention to detail, but then you've got the, I'm just going to go out and get this done.
Yeah, I hope I do. but so we actually had a job that we're going to get a big job, and we rented the unit next door to us because we needed the room basically to store parts, and the job fell through. So there was this unit we're paying for, and I was like, what are we going to do with it? And I'm like, I'm empty space. I love cars. So the first thing I actually wanted to do, this is back when actually my now business partner, back then childhood friend, he bought do you remember what a Merkur XR4 Ti, what that is?
What is that's Merkur?
Yeah,
right? Merkur?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was basically it was a Ford product from Europe that was brought here.
Turbo,
yeah,
4-cylinder.
Yeah, 2.3 liter turbo 4-cylinder, based on the Pinto engine. And he had one of those, like, hey, can you make this thing go fast? So I started playing around with it. I learned how to tune and just, I don't know, mechanically started tearing stuff apart. And back then, no one had a cam for that car. There's no camshaft, and that kind of intrigued me because my senior project in college was designing a camshaft. And back then, well, not back then, but there was no it might have been computer software. We didn't have access to it at the school, so I had to design a cam motion purely mathematically, which was awful. Which now you could probably literally take a linear motion, do it to a cam motion in probably 20 minutes of software. Back then, it took me 2 months of of doing all this stuff and learning. So that interested me, and I'm like, there's no cam for this car. Let me design a cam. And actually, I teamed up with a guy from that worked for NASA in California. I met him on a forum. We both took a cam design class for cars, and we both I just came up with a design for the car, and that was, I guess, the first product for the company. We had someone make us a cam, and we'd sold a couple hundred sets of those things, and they worked pretty well.
Really?
Yeah, so that was the first product. Yeah, Merkur XR4 Ti camshaft. That's a
wow.
Yeah,
you sold a couple hundred of those, huh?
Yeah.
All through the forums and stuff?
Pretty much. Yeah, back then it was all through forums. I mean, websites we just had a website, but it was pretty archaic back then. That was 98, 99 maybe, 2000. Yeah, something like that. But yeah.
And it wasn't AMS Performance at that point?
Well, we called it it was Automotive back then. That's what we called it. And the name just got shortened over the years because it just was a mouthful. Automotorsports,
Yeah.
So we just shortened AMS because it just became easier to pronounce. But yeah, it grew from that one product to I'm like, all right. Well, so I started that space next door to my dad's spot, and I'm like, all right, let's get this thing going. So I couldn't hire anyone, so I started wrenching on cars. I'm like, I opened this performance shop and started wrenching on cars. I bought a Galant VR4 back then, and I remember like, oh, no one has a good intercooler kit for this thing. Like, someone like sells an intercooler core, but there's no piping with it. I'm like, that'll be my first product. So between like, wrenching in cars, which I had no idea what I was doing, man. I wasn't a mechanic, so everything would take me 3 times as long. But I take my time, get stuff done right. And then I started making a little bit of money. And at this point, my parents helped me with a down payment house, and I was living there, and I couldn't afford the mortgage. So I had like 3 roommates in this tiny house, just to get by. I wasn't taking any money from the business, and when I started to make a little bit of money, I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? Am I going to take this money home, or am I going to hire a mechanic so I can go on to do something else in the company? And it was a no-brainer. I mean, if I want this thing to grow, I had to do that. So, I fought.
So any money that you made, you put right back into the business?
Yeah, and honestly, that went on for a long time. That went on for at least 5 years to 7 years. So when you say 5 to 7 years of putting the money back into the business, where's it going? Advertising or product development? No. Well, in the beginning, it was mostly hiring the right people to do the jobs. Like I went from being a mechanic to a fabricator. Then I hired a fabricator to do that. Then I was doing tuning. So then I hired, sales guys. So basically just, hiring putting the infrastructure in place, basically, to get the company kind of to where I want it to be. So that's where a lot of the money went. And a lot of it was personnel, equipment, and it was tough because I didn't have any, nothing to fall back on. I didn't have, no one gave me money. I didn't have huge loans I could rely on. So it was a balancing game of reinvesting in the business while still maintaining, cash.
Still having cash flow and money coming in.
Yeah, so you could stay afloat.
How hard is it to find qualified and passionate employees back then when you were still trying to build your name for the engineering work that you're doing?
Well, the engineering stuff really didn't take off till probably maybe 7 years ago. So 7 years into the business, we started to catch engineering products where she had someone doing engineering work. And it was hard. Someone asked me this the other day, is how do you find employees? And it really comes down to, for this industry at least, you got to find someone with passion, and passion for what they're going to be doing. Because if you find someone who just wants to punch a clock and, I'll design parts, or whatever you wanted me to do, and they don't have a passion for it, you're going to get in. That might work for a big OEM or a big company where they're just a little cog in the wheel into making one part, and are predefined inputs and outputs. But for what we're doing, you need someone who can see the big picture and just loves what they're doing. And it's been hard. It's really been hard finding good people. And luckily, I have found good people. It's taken time, and, I've had good and bad experiences with that,
So that's a perfect segue into a bad experience. Can you elaborate on a bad experience? I'd really like to hear, something that really had you kind of taken down. And hiring people and working with employees is always really difficult because, it's hard to see eye to eye. Can you take us to a situation like that where you had a difficult experience with an employee?
An employee? Trying to think. Really, it's getting someone in, and it's hard to, in an interview process, we try to meet someone a few times, have them spend a day here working with us, and usually you can go with your gut and get a good feel for them, but, that works maybe 80% of the time, and there's always those 20% where they get in there and in basically a few weeks to a month, you're like, oh boy, and it sucks. I hate letting people go, but this industry, there's no room for error. There's no room for having someone be mediocre. It's not a industry has huge profit margins, and you can kind of afford those luxuries. So you have to make those cuts pretty early on. But that happens. Like I said, it's 80% of the time it works out, and we try to do our due diligence as far as, getting someone in here and, making sure they stay.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as mistakes, man, I mean, this whole process has been a series of mistakes that you learn from, and that's the key, I think, is making mistakes and capitalizing on them or learning from them. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Right. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Get out there, make mistakes, learn from it, and move on. So what's a mistake that you've made? Give me one, a good one.
I mean, there's so many. There's just so many. God,
so take me to the most embarrassing one that you wouldn't tell most people and tell everybody in the world. Tell me a good one that we can really relate to.
I wouldn't say there's any really embarrassing ones, but some that just like we're like, oh man, that really hurt. I mean, there's a few. I mean, there's stuff from early on where we're doing our accountings by literally. I mean, we had no idea what we're doing with QuickBooks, and we just wouldn't write stuff down. And then we finally had to file taxes, and it was like, holy shit! Like we have no idea where's anything at. So like me and my business partner would literally spend we'd work till like 8 o'clock at night, then we'd stay up till 2 in the morning every night for like weeks in a row, just trying to like input everything into QuickBooks, get everything organized and sorted, and that sucked. We were already working, back then 12, 13 hours a day, then to stay up till 2 in the morning again and just keep working on that. That was awful. I mean, we learned from it because like, you know what? Don't make that mistake again. We got to stay organized. So that was one mistake, and I guess that was early on. More recently, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. I guess it is a mistake. A lot of our products that we've come out with in the past, I think they've been overthought and maybe over-engineered, and it's, again, partly due to my fault of seeking perfection, where I think people they don't see how much we do here, and I'm not saying that to brag, but like when
there's a lot that goes into a product.
There is a lot, and it's just
and all on the back end, and it's hard to get that value built into the product because there's so much that goes into designing something from scratch.
I mean, there does. And like I'll give you an example of right now we're doing heat exchangers for like a lot of the newer cars like Mercedes and Audi. They all have liquid to air heat exchangers for their intercoolers. So, it'd be great just to look at it and go, oh, slap on a bigger heat exchanger right there. But, okay, where is really the restriction in the system? There's the actual heat exchanger for the air portion, the heated air from the supercharger or the turbocharger. Then there's the ambient air to heated liquid heat exchanger, Then there's all the lines, fittings, the pumps. I mean, there's so much in that system. Where's the real restriction? So, I mean, we spent so much time. We actually would take a system off the car, build a flow bench, start putting pressure sensors in the system. We actually built a flow meter so we can actually measure mass flow through there and, like, doing all this stuff. And then we'll see, here's the restriction. Like, here's the biggest pressure drop across this. And there's so much to that. And sometimes in the end, you put it on the car, and on the dyno, there's, if you're doing just one dyno pull, something like that, there's almost an immeasurable difference, So
you do all that work, and on the dyno, you really have to make it work to even see a power gain.
Yeah, or something, or I guess if you do like a bunch of runs in a row, you'll see the heat soak, you'll see difference there. But it's like, our products can sell for a little more in a competition, but it makes, let's say because we optimize everything, it makes another 4 or 5 horsepower with the competition. Was it really worth? I mean, literally weeks of engineering time and maybe $10,000, $15,000 in R&D to gain that last few percentage, and that's the struggle now. Is kind of where do you draw the line?
Right. And could you put that $10,000 or $15,000 in weeks of engineering time somewhere else that would be more valuable?
Yeah, and that's a business. We're not making one product or even a handful of products. I looked at my QuickBooks. I mean, over the years, we have thousands of products that we've had, in our QuickBooks system, and a lot of the stuff's low volume. Like the GTR stuff we're doing, I mean, they don't sell that many of those cars. We're not selling, 1,000 parts. We're selling, on some of the stuff, we're selling 10 a year. Some we're selling 50 a year. It's just not really high volume. And especially if you put the engineering and the R&D into it and good manufacturing practices, it's expensive stuff to make. It really is.
especially when you're moving it, like you said, at the low volumes. And like casting is a great way and inexpensive at huge volume, but like you said, at a volume of 50 or 100, it's pretty harsh, or especially at 10.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the cars, like the newer cars you're working on now, there's no room, so you have to do an organic shape. Like,
so you can't do it with pipes and tubes. You mean you got to have complex shape.
Exactly, and that lends to a casting process of some sort. But then, we call a casting house and okay, yeah, we want 200 pieces a year. Like, all right, 200,000 pieces. Like, no, 200. Like, okay, thanks, bye.
They won't even talk to you.
Yeah, they won't even talk to you. So that's been actually a huge challenge is finding correct suppliers. And again, going back to the biggest mistakes, it's not really a mistake, but it's like we've been forced to kind of pay a premium for the parts and the materials to make a premium product. And it's great. It builds a brand and gets you the fastest cars and things like that, but there's a behind the scenes cost there that's people don't see.
And so a lot of that, things that maybe you're known for, really aren't the things that drive profitability. They drive the brand, and they drive kind of what you're about and who you are and your prestige, but you're not necessarily putting food on the table on those flagship products.
Yeah, not really. And that's kind of, and that's now we're focusing on, reducing manufacturing costs. And that's not in a bad way, meaning we're going to cheapen stuff. It's just finding more efficient ways of doing things with either volume or different suppliers, or changing some of the parts to make them easier to manufacture. And again, quality and performance is number one. We can't compromise those two things. But, to me, it was, if you come out with a shitty product or product that's subpar, you'll never build a brand name. You'll build a brand name for yourself of selling a shitty product or a cheap product, and you can make money doing that, but that's not what I'm about, or the business model of AMS is about, So to me, it was easier to build that brand, get that product out there, and now we can work on maybe some of the manufacturing stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So that we can get an idea of your products and services, if you divided your business into 3 categories, one being service, one being the sales of other people's products, I like to call it OPP.
Yeah.
And one the sale of your own products. Yeah. So the 3 categories being service, OPP, and your own products. Yeah. What percentage is each of those as your business?
Honestly, the service is a very, very small portion of the business. I'd say 5% of the business is service. And to be honest, the only reason we do service is so we can have, packages out there installed on cars. And mainly it's for our technicians to have experience with the product. And there's really no better feedback to our own product than having installed here in-house and having direct feedback from a mechanic. Because, it doesn't matter how good a distributor can be or another shop can be, there's something lost in translation when you ask them how well the product fit, Like, to someone, like, hey, it fits fine. To someone else, to us to be like, okay, well, you needed to trim that or hit this or, this.
And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
To have to trim and cut if you don't absolutely have to, for sure.
Yeah, so that's really the main reason of our services. So we have direct feedback from our own technicians on our own product. And then other people's products, we really sell them kind of to support our packages because, I'm not going to be one of those guys that go, oh, they're the AMS injectors and the AMS clutches and the AMS fuel, it's just, that's why bullshit, So we sell a lot of other products that we've, chosen wisely that's been working good, and we package that with our product to kind of, to make a complete package you can sell to a dealer or to a customer. And that's maybe 20 to 25% of our business, and then the rest, so roughly 70-75% of our business is making our own products.
And all of that being sold through your dealer network and then direct to consumer, not to your local community.
Yeah, mostly. And again, that's probably 75% of our product sales go to wholesale, or dealers, and 25 to end users.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this interview, Martin, I'm not going to lie, is pretty much blowing my mind. Your understanding of your business and kind of the things that you're dropping, it's gold.
Oh.
I mean, it to me, it really sounds like you know who you are, what your company's about, and where you're going. But how do you deal with the devil on your shoulder telling you that things can't be done? Like, do you doubt yourself?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, it's, like I said, I make mistakes all the time, and so someone told you they never make mistakes, they're lying, and that person's never going to learn. And to me, this whole thing is a learning process. I mean, I've been tuning cars for 15 years now, and I'm still learning stuff today. That to me is kind of what keeps my passion going. But as far as doubt, yeah, there's definitely a lot of doubt, and I guess I rely on my support network, which is the people kind of in the business, from my business partner to the managers to kind of the key players here to kind of like, I toss ideas out, because I hate just like, if I have an idea, I think it's great, but everyone else thinks it's a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea, So
you don't force that down people's throats.
No, I think that'd be insane. You gotta have other people gotta share your vision. If they don't share your vision at all, then that's usually a bad sign. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I come up with crazy, crazy ideas that don't make sense, and they're not good ideas. That's part of it. You got to brainstorm.
Yeah. So you keep mentioning your business partner. How do you get along with your business partner, and do your talents complement each other?
Yeah. He's kind of, we equated ourselves to, I'm the mad scientist creating like a path of disaster, forging, going forward, and he's kind of the guy behind me putting everything back on the shelf and cleaning up, So we work well together that way. Yeah.
So you don't try to do everything yourself. Like, you're really comfortable, it sounds like, working with other people. They always say, do what you do best and hire the rest. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, that's been tough too, because I always wanted to do things myself. Because again, in your mind, in my mind, we always do things the best, right? But that's been probably one of the hardest lessons, and I still struggle with it. I mean, I still struggle with it. Not trying to have my hand in everything, and as they call it, micromanaging. So that has been tough, but I think that's been a pretty big key to the business is finding the right people, putting them in the right spot, and actually trusting them to do things correctly. And sometimes, and here's the thing, sometimes they're not going to do things right. They're gonna screw up. They're gonna fuck up. But again, I'd be in the same position. If I'd be doing something there, I'd probably screw up too. So it's kind of learning to accept that. Right. Yeah. People always think, our audience is always asking if our guests have an aha moment. Is there a day that you woke up and you were at work and you said, now I get it, and everything just fell into place? And I feel like that's definitely a myth. It's really just about waking up and doing it day in and day out, over and over and over again. Would you agree? Yes. There is no, and that's, running a business, if you're passionate and head in the business, there's no maybe moment like that. I don't think I've had one. It's just kind of, like I said, one day you just kind of put your head up like, whoa, wow, we're doing a lot of stuff here. What's going on? It's I wouldn't say it's one moment like that. Right. I will say though, I think this is super important, and this is kind of maybe a tip to other guys in the business, is you have to step away and look at the big picture. And working hard is great, but you also have to work smart. If you're just, got your nose right in front of you, if you're looking at things in front of you and just tackling them on, you're not going to get to your long-term goal. So it sounds kind of counterproductive, but every time I've gone, and not that I go on vacations all the time, but when I do get away from the shop and either go on a vacation, or just get away from here, it clears your mind, and you're able to kind of step back and go, and maybe that's my aha moment, is saying, okay, we're spending all this time doing this. Is it really making us money? Or, man, that's really a problem. How can I tackle it? And getting away from the shop and kind of clearing your mind of all the day-to-day clutter lets you think and focus on that and find solutions to it. I've honestly, whenever I go on even a short trip, I spend the time like on the plane or somewhere like my mind's just free. My mind just wanders the business, and I start thinking of all these ideas which I wouldn't be able to do here working every day. I couldn't agree with you more. Isn't it funny how when you're on an airplane, all of a sudden things are just working in your brain? I find any time that I go to an event, when I'm on the plane, my mind's just working. It's like there's no fear of interruption.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no fear. You're not like, oh, looking over your shoulder, God, who's going to come to me next with a problem, or something like that. You're just
your phone can't go off.
Yep, yeah. There's the sound of the engine in the background, and kind of soothing you, and you're kind of you're just you can think about stuff that you normally don't have
Something
time.
Magical going on.
It's like meditation, I guess, at some point. Yeah.
So, Martin, did you know that the GTR market was going to be as big as it is when you guys got into it?
No, I didn't, and that was a risk for us.
Because before that, you were known for Evos. Yeah,
we did a lot of Evos, and that was a good market for us. And we still do some Evo 89 stuff and Evo 10 stuff. Even though obviously I think the Evo 10 this is the last year of the Evo 10, but we still sell product for that. But the GTR at that point, I think when we started, like everyone's like, oh, you can't tune this car as you change the wheels, the car will go into limp mode. So it was definitely a scare, and it was a risk, but it's like we had to do something next. Now I'm always looking to the next thing, because in this industry, every let's say 5 years or so, the platform changes. So if you wait till that 5th year and start thinking about what you're going to do next, you're in trouble.
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely a risk, and I really didn't know where it was going to go, but obviously it worked out. It worked out pretty well.
Right. So, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Oh, man.
That's a tough one, I know. Would you do anything differently, or are all your hard knocks what made you what you are today and where you are today?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if I had to make those mistakes, if I was sheltered from those mistakes, I'd make that mistake eventually anyway. So it's... I don't know. There's not one thing where I'd say, I wish I could. I didn't do that. I don't know. That's probably not. I'd say
fair enough.
That's thankfully I learned from my mistakes, and that's a good thing. Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna get at risk here, and I'm gonna ask you a question that's on everybody's minds, and that's, where does the money come from? And it sounds to me like it's not one particular moment. Everybody thinks that, you just woke up and all of a sudden you're working on supercars, but it definitely doesn't work that way. And I feel like you've already talked about all these things. So to ask you, how do you get involved in it and where does the money come from? It sounds to me like it just comes from, product development and a quality product.
Yeah, really that. And I won't say just planning the business, and it's funny you kind of mentioned that, because over the years I've heard like many rumors about like where AMS gets its money, and this is when I was I'm 41 right now, and I was maybe 5 years in the business. I was like 33, 34. There's a rumor going around that I was a 19-year-old millionaire, and like my father owned some big business complex. I'm like, wow. And then recently I heard very recently that we get funding from sheiks in the Middle East or something like that. Someone owns us. I'm like, wow, these are just very interesting rumors. But it's just
coming out of all over.
Yeah, so it's like, there's no magic recipe. I didn't, I think if I had maybe investors, I don't know if I'd be to where I am today, because I had to make do with less. So like I said, it's a balancing act. It really is. Every year, every quarter, we sit down and look at things, and we're like, all right, well, we have a little bit of money come in, and we're, it's kind of, this sounds kind of bad, but we're not like we're sitting on a huge bank account like, oh, where do we spend all this cash? It's always like, all right,
that doesn't sound bad. Absolutely. If you have money, that's a good thing.
That's
and
a
then
good thing.
You choose, instead of putting a gold watch on your wrist, right?
Yeah.
You put it back into the business and build new products and hire new staff.
My engineers, this is perfect, 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, hey, we need a 3D scanning arm. And I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like a good idea. Tell me about it. And we can scan, parts of the car, engines, and we can design everything in CAD then a lot easier. And I'm like, oh, how much is it? Like, 60 and 80 grand. Like, oh, fantastic. I'm like, all right, I thought we had some profits. They're all gone now. But if I didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of things with the products that we're doing today. So it's a fine line of reinvesting everything back into the business. And it's funny you mentioned a gold watch, because if I told you the car I drive every day right now, you'd laugh at me really bad. And that's the question I get when people come out to visit me, like vendors or customers, like, oh, what kind of car do you drive? I'm like, next question. That's my philosophy, I guess, on the business.
What is it?
Oh God, it's a 1999 Champagne Nissan Maxima. That was my mom's old car. Yeah. Oh, and the best part is it's got built-in massaging seats. It's really just a misfire it has that shakes the whole car. So we call it the misfire massage. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny when you tell people that you have a performance shop, the first question they always want to ask is, what kind of car do you drive?
Yeah.
And the answer is never very Hollywood. It's always, well, I have a tow rig, and I think that I just end up driving my truck around. And the only reason I even have my truck is because I tow my trailer with it.
Yeah. Well, am I going to spend the money on buying myself a nice car that I'm going to drive every day, or am I going to take that money and buy a development car for the shop that we can make parts for? You know, that's my philosophy on it. Yeah.
So that's a perfect segue, actually, into the favorite tool, because you were talking about your 3D scanner. What kind of 3D scanner do you have? The one I'm familiar with is the Artec Eva.
Yeah.
You have some. What do you have?
It's called a roamer arm.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a roamer arm. So we have actually two arms. One was a touch probe arm, and we got that probably 5 years ago, and it was great for like inspection and doing some certain things, but it's touch probe. So if you want to get organic shape, if you want to scan the engine bay of a car, good luck. You're going to be there for 2 months, scanning. So that's why we got a 3D laser scanner arm, so we can just scan the whole thing into it.
Right.
Favorite tool, guess that I use. I really use it. My engineers use that stuff. I guess my favorite tool would be the chassis dyno.
Yeah.
And that's just because you can measure. That's what we use to measure a lot of quantify our products, and we try to do as accurate as possible before and after result tests our products, and it's kind of it's the final gauge of how your product is doing, I guess.
Where the rubber meets the road, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't BS it if that's where you get your actual data.
Yeah.
That's where everything, all the engineering for the last months and years comes together, and you find out if it was worth it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and trust me, we've had plenty of products that we spent all this time making out, put in a dyno, we're like, 0. Okay, awesome.
Right.
But that's again part of the reason why now we're putting, like I said, the R&D up front to measure it, because the intake looks restrictive, and you might spend a bunch of time making an intake, but if you don't measure the pressure drop across it, and if you don't see something that's, if there's no gain to be had by making a new one, why make it, So, yeah, but
You're really showing us, who you are and what your company's about, and no BS. This is why you are where you are, and how your company holds such a high prestige in the industry, because it sounds to me like BS and false claims aren't going to come out of your camp.
Oh, yeah, that's a struggle.
But it's tough sometimes, huh? Because wouldn't it be nice to just kind of fudge the number and sell the product? But you can't do it.
Yeah, it really would. And I'm like the worst. I am the worst liar out there. Like, my wife's like, she'll ask me a straight up question. So something even stupid, and like I probably could lie about, and I'm like, nope. Like she'll make me like a lunch, for work. Like spends all this time making lunch, and I take it to work, and for some reason I wind up going to lunch. Like, did you eat lunch? I should have been like, yeah, it was great. It was delicious. I'm like, nope, I didn't. And she'd be like, why did I make that lunch for you? But I can't lie. I just can't. I can't do it. So that's a struggle when we go to market and I see everyone's claiming plus 30 horsepower with this exhaust, and
it's BS.
And like, come on, man! It's like, how?
There's no way.
Yeah, there's no way. So like, how are you going to sell products if I tell the truth and it picks up 5 horsepower, I'm not going to sell anything. So it's so.
So in that situation, do you not make the product, or do you come and you say, and then you have to fight every customer, or not fight, but you have to hold your ground with every customer and be like, I'm sorry that's what they say, but that's not reality.
That's tough. It is, and a lot of times we don't go to market with a product. So we spend a lot of time making a product, whatever, and then either we don't go to market, or you have to. Here's the thing, like exhaust. Really, a lot of modern cars have really good exhaust. So if you're going to sell it, you sell it as it's a sound thing, because you know what, the car is super quiet. You want the car to sound aggressive. Hey, you're going to pick up 8 horsepower and it's going to sound good. That's really the thing. If you try this bullshit and say, hey, it's going to do 30 horsepower, yeah, you'll sell those exhausts for maybe a year and a half, and and people are going to start realizing, wait a minute, So I don't know.
And maybe the consumer doesn't realize it, but the industry knows.
The industry knows, yeah, and
industry knows who you are.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. And that's it's easy to kind of turn a blind eye and go, look at this market, 20 horsepower from this, 30 from that, and I don't know. It's a tough decision. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's the truth, and I'm 100% behind you on that one, my friend.
And I will tell you, I actually, and this is, I guess, a mistake on my part. So this is a mistake I made. We had a car, we're working on a Porsche, and it had someone's, and we did our turbo kit on the car. We called it Alpha 9 package. Had someone else's exhaust on the car, or the customer brought the exhaust in. I looked at it and I'm like looking at this thing. I'm like, I warned the customer, this thing is going to hurt horsepower. It had the muffler had a louvered design. You know what I'm saying? It's got the louver that are punched out. A perforated tube had a louver design, so they're sticking in the airflow. So it was a 2.5-inch exhaust, but with the louvers that are perforated, that are sticking in the airflow, and they're sticking in the direction of the airflow.
To grab it, and shove it through.
You maybe had 1.5 inch exhaust, and then I'm like, this is going to hurt horsepower. But whatever, we put it on the dyno, we start running, and the thing's like just, you won't take any timing. It's knocking, detonating. All of a sudden, just losing crazy horsepower. Like, what the hell? And so, like, let's put we had exhaust here. We don't make an exhaust for this car. We have nothing to gain from it. We had some other, I think it was, I won't name any companies, but it was another exhaust that's decent. It's good. We put on the car picked up like 100 horsepower. It did what it's supposed to do. The cats wound up clogging on the thing. I look at the cats, and literally the name of the cat was Mexicat. And I looked at the part number. It was like a $38 cat you could buy online, and they were being touted as like a high-end European special cat for racing on this exhaust, and then sold for like big money. I'm like, this is a bunch of bullshit. I'm like, I was so pissed off. This customer wasted time, money. I wasted time on the dyno, and these companies getting away with selling garbage product. So I made a blog. I think it was called The Truth or something like that. And I put this up, and I didn't name the company. I think I'm in the picture. I might have had a little logo, and man, it backfired. It's like the 2 people that were like, awesome for telling us this. It was like 50 people just ripping on me, saying I cheated. I put different cats on the car. I'm just trying to make them look bad. I'm like, we don't even make an exhaust. We're not even gonna make an exhaust for this car. So, that was, I should have held my tongue on that. But it's just, you see this bullshit so much in this industry. It's hard to sometimes.
Yeah. So that's a crazy thing, because you've had huge success in the market, but then here the market is, and you've had success because you're telling the truth, or you're going out really with the facts.
Yeah.
And here you are telling the facts, and the market's like, no, we don't want to hear that.
Yeah. I think, I guess people don't want to hear the truth sometimes. They want to just believe a lie, or, they get fed a nice, plate of lies, and I guess they want to believe it sometimes. I guess maybe some customers feel bad for spending the money, and they don't want to. I don't know.
Right. So they have an emotional investment in it.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yep.
Crazy business we're in.
Crazy business we're in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Martin, tell us something that's got you fired up right now. What are you doing right now that's got you fired up? A new product? Like, what do you guys have in the fire right now? I've heard through the grapevine that you'll manage 28 engineering projects at a time. Can you tell us what you're working on right now?
Oh man, a lot of stuff. We're doing some stuff with GTR engines. Making some products for either on billet block we're working on, which we're now proving the concept in our Alpha Omega, our GTR.
That's up and running, huh?
Yeah, it's up and running. We actually ran it once, made some changes. We're running it again now. It's going to the Texas 2K race next week. So a bunch of different GTR projects. Our carbon manifold for the GTR. It's a carbon plenum with aluminum cast lowers. That's an awesome product. It's not going to make us money because it's cost so fucking much to make.
So how do you know how to price that? If you're casting the lowers, and I can't imagine that you'll sell more than, I don't know what the market size is, but I can't imagine it's more than 10 or 20 in a year. How do you justify casting it? And I mean, I guess you just charge more for it, but I still, like you said, you barely even break even.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd have to sell 50 a year to even cover my R&D costs to do it. 50 or 60 in a year to even cover that. I mean, I hope we're planning on selling 75 to 100 sets of those manifolds in a year.
Okay.
I think the market's there for it. It's an awesome piece, but that's just one of the products where we kind of looked at it as a halo product, not as a money-making kind of product. And, the cost, I mean, it's not going to be cheap. It's a lot of money, but, it's different than anything else out there. It's kind of unique. I mean, I've had people come in from like race teams and go, "That's a $20,000 intake manifold." I'm like, I wish I could sell for that much. Like this belongs on a Le Mans P1 car, and but it's just So it's more of a halo product. But that's that project. Working on a lot of European cars now. Mercedes, some Audi stuff, some BMW stuff, and a lot of those cars, and the customer isn't going to want to, like a GTR make 1,500 wheel horsepower. It's just not. That's not the market. It's not what the car is made for. So, which is kind of cool because you limit some of your liability with that, pushing cars that far. But we're doing a lot of cool stuff as far as like upgraded turbos. Exploring a lot with OEM ECU tuning. That to me, I've spent past 2 years learning some of that stuff.
That's something that you're handling personally?
Yeah, that's something I'm handling. So, yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on. But like you said 20 projects. I mean, we have a lot of projects going on, but I've got 3 engineers, and I have one guy in charge there that's kind of handling a lot of it, and we have a weekly production meeting. So a lot of those guys kind of they run with it. I just get updates every week of how stuff's going and brought in on critical decisions or certain things, but otherwise they kind of run with the projects.
Nice.
Yeah.
So to end the conversation, what do you think the future of automotive performance is? Like, what do you think about the new NSX?
Honestly, I haven't had much time to look into it, so not sure. But scary, if I could describe the future of aftermarket automotive performance, it's a little scary and daunting because there's so many changes going on. Everything from direct injection to hybrid. I mean, so many of these like supercars or even performance cars are going to a hybrid platform, and I mean, it's going to be so tough for any performance shop, including us, to jump that bridge, to get into electronics. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be impossible for a long time. I mean, you're not going to sit there and start hopping up batteries or motors. I mean, that's a huge liability. Massive knowledge base, you'd have to even play with that stuff. So that to me is a little bit scary, of what's going to happen in the future. And I'm talking 5 to 10 years down the road. Next few years, things are going to be probably relatively the same, but I think good for us. Everything's going turbo, so that's good for our business. But long term, it's a little scary to see what's going on. Yeah. Right.
So what's the future for you and your company at AMS and Alpha Performance? I see a lot more European stuff.
Yeah, that's really kind of the we want to broaden our product line because, some of those cars, like GTR, like I said, they make 3,000 a year. I mean, some of the platforms, like especially when they share engines across platforms, you're talking 60,000 a year. Potential, customers. So that's kind of the thing. We want to get in the European market, and the challenge there really is with OEM ECUs. That's really the big challenge, is figuring out a tuning solution for that stuff, be it a piggyback or actually tuning the factory ECU. Or complete replacement for the ECU. That's going to be, I think, the next big game changer for that industry.
Yeah, and then so really you're limited with the factory ECU to, I guess, how much time you want to spend decoding the back end. So at some point, it's more worth it to replace the ECU as long as there is a solution for that.
Yeah.
But when do you draw that line? 90% of the market's going to be able to be handled with what the ECU can do.
Exactly. If you can, like I'll give you an example. BMW M5. We made a set of upgraded turbos on it. You slap turbos on the car, they make 0 horsepower because that ECU is targeting a certain torque level. It's saying this is the torque that the engine is going to put out, and it doesn't matter what you do to it, basically.
Because it knows air fuel ratio and fuel flow.
Exactly.
So you can't trick it.
It models everything. It knows what it's doing. It's pretty crazy. So you have to actually go in there and actually have the computer request more load or run more load or things like that. And that's kind of been the struggle and the hump we're trying to overcome. And in some platforms like the Mercedes, the 5.5 bi-turbo, which is like in the E63, CLS63, ML63, a bunch of cars, I've probably spent, honestly, a year's worth of my time reading documents, looking at stock ECU stuff, and just figuring stuff out, how everything works. And it's crazy how complex that stuff is. I mean, I thought someone thinks a standalone's complex. Man, this shit will blow your mind. It's blowing my mind, that's for sure. I'm learning so much and still have a lot to learn.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your background in software? You have a background in software? Or
Zero. I have zero background in software. No, so that's, and I'm not, I'm not doing any coding itself, but I'm actually, stuff we're able to do is look at different functions the ECU has. And a lot of it's, it's not like, oh, this is air fuel tables. This is, a lot of it's kind of, engineering terms and trying to reverse engineer how they model kind of certain functions for the ECU to do. So it's been a lot. I was telling someone, it's kind of like, you're just finding random stuff, and it kind of leads you. It's a guessing game. You take educated guesses. It's somewhat of a guessing game. We start eliminating certain pieces of the puzzle, and you start getting closer to the final goal with the stuff. But it's complex. It really is.
Well, Martin, you're an incredible guy and incredibly modest, because the company that you run is a really big deal. So I just want to say thanks so much for taking time out of your day, especially I know that this is the busy time of year. I could talk to you about this stuff for the rest of my life because I'm totally intrigued by what you guys are doing, and I've watched you from afar for a long time. So, again, I just want to say thanks for coming here and talking about your business, kind of what you guys are doing and what you're about. It's helped me to understand a little bit more and have even more respect for what you guys are doing. I'm impressed.
Thanks, Reed. I appreciate the opportunity for sharing some of this stuff. And it's a fun job in the end. It really is.
Nice. So how do we connect with you and your company?
Well, you can go to amsperformance.com or alphaperformance.com to our website, really, or on Facebook. We also have a good presence on there. So that's probably the best ways to get a hold of us.
Martin, well, thanks again, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Thank you, Reed.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe,